Sorry for the delay. I'll call to order the August 13th Town Council meeting, Washington, Virginia. First item in hand, the minutes from March 12th. Do we have any questions, observations, changes, other than the usual grammatical? We'll take care of that. If no changes, motion to approve.
I make a motion.
All in favor? Treasurer's report, Mr. Gold.
Thank you. The total consolidated assets of the town of Washington as of 7/31/2018 was $456,910.80. During that same period, the total consolidated assets of the Washington Water Works was $26,494.06, and the wastewater was $18,498.73. July water usage, we pumped 934,500 gallons, backwashed 28,200, leaving us 906,308 billable gallons, and we billed 644,560. We sold another 15,000 gallons, leaving us 246,740 treated but not yet billed gallons. Total income for the town of Washington, July 2018, was $29,923.46. The income for the Washington Water Works was $7,295.18, and the wastewater income was $18,498.70. Attached are the bills to be paid and the additional bills to be paid. There's really nothing this month out of the ordinary. But if there's any questions, I will do my best to answer. But other than that, that is all I have today. We did have to buy a laptop computer for the, not a laptop, a regular computer for the wastewater. That's what the Amazon $684 is on the additional bills.
Any questions? If not, I'm sorry, Brad.
You bought a computer, what happened to
Aye.
is that the units in the control room? In the control panel?
No.
No, the
It's
one
a-
they used
one they
to
use to
do the
reports.
reports
Oh.
and such.
It's not one of the regular things.
Okay.
And this
Okay.
is the desktop.
The first and the second to approve, I think. All,
Motion to approve.
pardon?
Motion to approve. Did you get it?
All in favor?
You got it.
No,
I thought we did.
Okay.
I thought we did, I'm sorry.
No, there's no vote. You make a motion.
Yeah,
We need a second.
I'll second.
thank you.
Okay, planning commission.
Then all
Any,
in favor.
I'm just not, I'm not
You're
with.
moving ahead.
Yeah, I'm moving ahead. All in favor? Aye. Planning commission, Mr. Chapman.
Planning Commission had a good working session with Housing Task Force just last week. I'd like to report on that when we get to the point where task force committees provide an update.
Great. ARB, I don't know if they have a meeting.
They met last week and approved the Avon Hall change.
John Bennett is not here. Before we get to the public hearing, let me just mention three things and sort of news updates. Number one, today is Laura Dodd's birthday. And she has spent her day doing things that one should not be doing on her birthday.
After the meeting.
Secondly, street paving. We think the streets are going to be paved sometime early in September. The last message from VDOT, which is always vague, was late August or September, way behind because of the rain. We reminded them that quite a few people are showing up for Labor Day weekend. That might actually be a good time to pave streets. Thirdly, to a more serious note, status of the post office. The status is we are waiting day by day to hear what their decision is. We should know sometime this week. For what it is worth, there's a copy. Let me back up here. To remind people, there's 3 candidates. Jerry Martin's office on K Street. Jimmy DeBerg has proposed putting up a building down by the bank. And Jay Miller has proposed they're using a building on 211 that's kind of across from the bank. We, in our totally objective view, have the best alternative. Hope we have the one that succeeds for all the obvious reasons. Jerry Martin's done a lot of work. Butch Sindel has done a hell of a lot of work, and he deserves credit. There is, as a handout, a letter that I wrote that was part of what went in the post office, which pretty much summarizes our view and the arguments for them staying here. So we'll find out. I'm literally waiting by the hour or day. And they said it was going to take a long time. They were not yet. So much for that. Okay. Next on the agenda is a public hearing which I want to open to address the P2P ordinance, otherwise known as Airbnb. For those who are new, the Planning Commission and then the Council together separately have spent a lot of hours, a lot of discussions on Airbnb and what our ordinance should be. This is the second public hearing because we had a slight change in the last go-round and we re-advertised it as the second public hearing. I think everybody has had a good chance to weigh in on our ordinance, but this is one more public hearing, so if anybody in the audience has any observations about it or questions or whatever, this is it. All right. If none, it is a subject that's been talked about. I will close the public hearing, and the issue on the table is whether the town council is prepared to approve this ordinance as has been distributed, as has been discussed. I think it's, I've already said, a lot of work has gone into a very complicated subject. And in my own view, this is a very, very good outcome. A year from now, our learning experience suggests we should tweak it a little bit one way or the other, then we can do that. But it's a very good effort.
Mr. Mayor, would you like a motion?
I would love a motion.
I'd like to move that the ordinance to authorize short-term rental P2P lodging by special use permit or stated findings and conditions, and the addition of operator and short-term rental as new definitions to the ordinance definitions, titled ordinance that is before the town council be approved as written.
A second? All right, there should be a roll call vote. Brad, should we start with you?
Yes.
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 All right. A long time coming and a very quick conclusion. One way to do it. Seems like. All right, the next items on the agenda are all business, and if it is acceptable to members of the council and the audience for that matter, we're going to reverse the order. On the agenda first has task force committee update, but I think we're going to proceed with the public fair in-stock resolution consideration, and I think we'll just get going with that.
Mr. Mayor, I'll recuse myself from this discussion.
I think that's a commendable idea. All right. You're going to hear a little bit from me as we go through this. John Bennett, counsel, is not here. He's in California. Everything that we're doing has been fully vetted with John. This is not a public hearing. This is not really open to public comment. We've been having discussions for now 5 or 6 months. So let me summarize where we are and get on with it. So tonight we're going to be voting on the formal resolution authorizing a, quote, public fair, generally known as in-stock, to be held in town Sunday, September 2nd. This resolution is required by zoning ordinance 1-5-1. As you recall, the council has discussed in-stock, beginning with a presentation by a representative of the inn at our February 12th meeting. Council and the public have discussed this, quote, public fair to one degree or another at subsequent meetings on March 12th, April 9th, May 14th, May 29th, I think, June 11th, and 7/9. And those were public discussions, lots of comment. At our May 29th meeting, the council concluded that, quote, this event will drive people to this town, building awareness of the town, helping our businesses in the town and county, raising our profile, and frankly taking advantage of the inn's exposure, which will be substantial. Rappahannock News has covered and reported on each of these discussions, and of course they've been available to the public at large via the live video recordings. Let me insert 2 things here. There is a bit of an update in terms of in-stock. One is, at one point there had been some talk about possibly closing down a block or 2 of the town for matters of convenience. It was decided that that's not going to happen, so that's not on the table. Secondly, there had been some discussion about possibly housing people, glamping is the phrase I've come to learn, on the in property in the town, and that is no longer being discussed, proposed. Thirdly, I want to point out that courtesy of Teresa Wood and Bonnie Moore and a bunch of other people, there's been a tremendous outreach to the businesses in the county. So I think it is fair to say that this is going from a fair, a public event, which will clearly be good for the town of Washington for the inn, but it's also going to be at least as valuable to businesses within the county. To remind that there's roughly 800 people showing up here for a weekend, the inn's event is only on Sunday afternoon. That means those people are looking for things to do Saturday and Monday. So Teresa and the business of Rappahannock Group have organized all kinds of events and buses and this and that to get the whole county to benefit from this event. As part of doing the public fair, there are certain conditions that are outlined in the town ordinance that have to be kind of checked off, as it were. You have in front of you, we picked it up out there, and the council has a detailed letter dated July 31st from David Fisk, the lawyer for the inn. I hope everybody has a copy. I want it in the public record.
I don't believe I put that out. It's public, but I have copies if anybody wants
Okay.
one. I'll get it to you.
And if one wants, I'm more than happy to read it. But let's go through it. People will come back to that weekend. Now, I'm sorry, we're going to be just right here, so you have to listen to me continue talking a bit. The ordinance 1-5-1, which requires public, I'm not going to quote, public fairs, and what in-stock is a public fair, may be permitted for defined times with such conditions as the town governing body may require or imposed by resolution of the town governing body upon a determination by a majority of the members that, and there's sort of 5 that's. Adequate insurance or life surety is in place to handle any liability attaching to the town's residents. That's 1A. Second, the fair or event is in the best interest of the town of Washington residents and businesses. It's the second. The third, that there's no unreasonable imposition on business and residents of the area will result. It's the fourth. And the, there's 6, excuse me. No, it's fine. The fourth is adequate public services exist to serve the expected attendees. And the fifth, which is E in the ordinance, provisions are in place to handle cleanup and replacement of any damaged town property. Now what we're going to do is go through each of these and vote on each of these to test whether the in-stock is meeting these conditions. And then we will vote as to the entire resolution. But to start with, before that, I do need a motion to approve or discuss this resolution. The resolution I'm supposed to read.
I'd make a motion to approve the resolution if it meets the criteria.
Do I have a second?
Sure.
You have a second. Okay. I've been encouraged to read the resolution. I apologize. I think everybody may have it, but we're on video here. Whereas the Inn at Little Washington has heretofore come before council and outlined its plans to hold September 2nd event beginning at 4 p.m. local time, an outdoor food festival will be known as In Stock on its private property consisting of approximately 20 acres between Calvert and Middle Street. And whereas Councilperson O'Connell has recused himself in consideration of this resolution and has not participated in discussions thereof. Whereas Council, after placing this matter on its agenda and giving notice of the agenda item and discussion and hearing of public comments at various meetings, has found such event to be in the best interest of the town, its residents, citizens, businesses, and not harmful, and has voted to extend monetary support to the event in furtherance of the best interest of the town, its residents, citizens, and businesses. Whereas, the Inn at Little Washington did on the 31st day of July submit an application and all appropriate information pertaining to the requirements of sections 1-5-1, which I just referred to. And the acting zoning administrator did thereafter certify the application to be complete and ready for consideration by the county, and did request that the clerk add consideration of this resolution to the council's meeting of this day. And whereas the council did on this date, namely 13th of August cutoff, consider and determine each of the requirements of section 1-5-1 through inclusive, and did find affirmative as to each and every requirement by separate roll call vote as to each item. A majority of a quorum having voted in the affirmative that each such requirement A through E inclusive was satisfied. Now therefore, a motion made and duly seconded, which we just had, and upon a roll call vote of a majority of a quorum of the town council, the town of Washington, the following resolution shall be adopted. Be it resolved by the town council of the town of Washington, Virginia, a permit is hereby granted the Inn at Little Washington, or such legal entity of the Inn at Little Washington as may be conducting the public fair, to conduct a public fair on the 20-acre parcel set forth above, beginning at 4 p.m. and ending at 11:59 local times on the second day of September 2018, together with such preparations at other times as may be necessary to accomplish such public fair. The said public fair to be in the nature of an outdoor food festival and associated activities, including fireworks, is having been determined by a majority of the quorum of a separate roll call vote as to each requirement, A through E, inclusive, that such each requirement has been satisfied, addressed, and found to be in the affirmative. And moreover, that such public fair is in the best interest of the town, its residents, citizens, and businesses. Done this day, 13th August 2018. So that is the ordinance that we're dealing with. That is the resolution approving the public fair. And I now want to open it up to comments, questions, observations, whatever, members of the town council with regard to any of the 5 conditions that I have already talked about.
I think it would be helpful to the public because they don't have this. David Fisk wrote about what they plan to do and about the security and all that. If you
Or
just-
would you make a bunch of copies of that?
You might want to read just these things that are.
Yeah.
The bullets, yeah.
Yeah, why don't
Because it tells you a lot.
Why don't I do that? Because this is the July 31st letter. You'll get a copy. Beginning of it is all what it's about. And then it says, in our prior discussion, we have addressed the factors required for approval. Having resolved the outstanding issues, there remains only the formal resolution. The town may take into consideration the following. 1, in-stock would be held on the inn's private property, therefore no liability would attach to the town. Second, all town residents have received a complimentary invitation to attend. Thirdly, there will be substantial benefit to local tourism, including bed and breakfast, restaurants, and shops for the surrounding weekend. Live music, which will be at a reasonable decibel level, will contribute to the town's established goal of being, quote, the cultural and entertainment center of the county. That's part of our comp plan. As the town council concluded in May 2018, the event will encourage, quote, driving people to this town, building awareness of town, helping our businesses in the town, raising our profile, and taking advantage of efforts at the inn's exposure, which should be substantial. Next item, I've lost count here. The private location ensures minimal imposition to residents and public services. Next, Virginia ABC regulations are met. Next, the inn has also maintained a security firm as a safety precaution. Next, portable toilets and waste disposal and recycling will be accessible and will ensure that there is no impact on the town's environment, sewage system, or other public services. Next, parking will be available on private lots and will not impact parking in the town. Next, the fireworks company has provided a plan to the town and local officials, meaning county officials, including law enforcement, meaning the sheriff's office, to ensure a safe and exciting fireworks display. Next and last, a cleanup team will ensure that detritus is properly disposed of. The business community in both the town and county have embraced the event and are working together with the inn to promote it. We're excited about the benefits of in-stock and happy to answer any questions the council may have. This second. Not that this subject is new, but any questions in particular as to the different conditions? And we'll discuss it, then once we finish the discussion, if there is one, we'll then vote item by item.
What was new that all the conditions are met? My one concern, well, one of my concerns was about the fireworks. One of my concerns was about the fireworks, but there is an email thread from Kevin Williams from the Rappahannock County Building Office, and it is the county that is actually giving the permit for the fireworks display, and he agrees to it. There's an email here about that, so that's taken care of, and that was one of my concerns.
Just to expand that a little bit, the fireworks company approached the town, asked our permission. We said, actually, we don't have to get it from us, but we want to know everything that's going on. You got to talk to the county, talk to Jerry Curry, the county administrator, who puts them in touch with the building office, which is the ones that really have to deal with this. And the gentleman from the building office went out and marked out exactly at the end where the stuff was gonna happen, et cetera, et cetera. And the fireworks people have all the appropriate they do this, it's their profession. They have all the appropriate licenses and experience to do the fireworks. And the only last thing I will say on that is, I promise that, I think it's already clear, but this time the fireworks will not be a surprise.
And it was in the paper as well
Yes.
for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll likely be there again. Other questions, observations?
John? I'll just input that our house shares more property boundary with the inn than anybody in town. We routinely see in gas walk past our house. When blueberries are in season or anything else in our gardens, we typically pick and share with whoever guest happens to wander by. So seeing how the inn is taking care of the 5 particular points, I'm quite comfortable having this event just literally across the yard from us.
You can sell tickets.
I know. Parking tickets? Sure. So,
All right, if no other questions, it is time to vote on these 5 different conditions. It's a roll call vote. Do we believe, A, that there is adequate insurance or life surety is in place to handle any liability attaching to the town residents? How do you vote?
yes.
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 Secondly, second condition, that the fair or event is in the best interest of the town of Washington residents and businesses.
Yes.
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 Thirdly, no unreasonable imposition on businesses and residents of the area will result. Let's start out this way.
Yes.
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 Adequate public services exist to serve the expected attendees.
Yes.
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 That's not good.
Lastly, provisions are in place to handle cleanup and replacement of any damaged town property.
Yes.
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 All right. So this event passes all the conditions as called for by 1-5-1. Unanimous vote on all conditions. So although we have a motion, we already have a motion and a second on the table to approve this, but let's just do that one more time and then we'll vote.
I would make the motion to approve the request for the public prayer in Washington, September 2nd.
Catherine, you
And
know.
you approve the resolution.
Yeah, I approve
Yes.
No, would you second that?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Yes.
Have we missed anything here? You want me to read some more stuff? I could read the whole ordinance book. All right, all in favor, roll call?
Yes.
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 it. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Done.
Already done.
Great. I thank those of you who came to that. Right, the next item of old business, and then there'll be one new business item having to do with fire hydrant, is task force committee update. Fred, may I ask you to,
Sure.
there with folks where they stand on that?
Sure. let me reach out, are there any reports from the business development or the church development?
Right, I can get both those reports. The Tourism Task Force has been meeting throughout the summer and had its fourth meeting last week, August 7th, finalizing its recommendations to the town council. And we're going to present them at the next meeting of the town council on September 10th. The Business Development Task Force is having its fourth meeting on August 22nd, and we're finalizing the recommendations and going also to give it to council at its September 10th meeting. But if people would like to know what's actually been happening in these meetings, they can get the minutes from our town office. They're available to the public.
And the business development meeting on the 22nd is
And that's here at 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Finance and administration, you wrote the minutes. Do you want to report on them?
Sure. We had our first meeting August 1st, 5 to 6. We had 5 people show up: Gail Swift, Greg Patton, myself, John Foxon, and Laura Dodd. We just went through the basic beginning, so we elected Gail Swift as our chairman and myself as the secretary. And we just kind of went through, set up a few objectives that we were going to look for in the next meeting. Didn't really decide on anything particular, but kind of created a list of needs and wants for the town. Investigated, find a new office space for the clerk. Created a job. Decided to create a job description for a maintenance person or someone to assist Laura. And then we just had a general discussion about obtaining grants for the town well. We talked about bills and lodging taxes, looked at the cost of maintenance agreements, water and sewer infrastructure, setting up a repair account and ideas for funding such account. And then we left it there after an hour. We did all that, and we set our next meeting August 29th at 5 o'clock. All are welcome. Encourage you to come. And that's where we left it.
Thank you. Anything for infrastructure?
In our last meeting, we did go through, elect myself as chairman, Nancy is secretary, since she's been keeping track of the notes from the meeting. Nothing really to report this time. We assigned some tasks, so everybody's sort of busily trying to gather information. I've been out of town for a bit, but trying to get a hold of, sit down with Laura, start with the water system, roads, and such. We've got some issues coming up with our water plan. What's the one that we had a meeting on?
Water supply plan,
Water
the
supply.
county.
Right, water supply plan. And then you just notified me that we have something coming from FEMA that we have to address.
Yes, we have FEMA is changing their floodplain plan map, and what previously was on the floodplain in the town of Washington has now been taken off. So we're going to go over all of that, and then as part of our ordinance, we have a flood plan ordinance, and we have to pass a new one. I'll have to pass a new one reflecting the changes that have come out. So in September, we'll be meeting with the county to go over some.
So we'll incorporate that into notes on that into the infrastructure reports.
The fifth of the task forces with the housing task force, we had at the July 11th meeting of the housing task force, we discussed the development of a plan unit development ordinance, what would be involved in a plan unit development ordinance, why it would be something to consider. We then had a work session to which members of the Planning Commission and the public were invited on August 8th to go over a draft of what a plan unit development ordinance might look like. We will have on August 27th a joint session of the Planning Commission at its regular meeting and the joint session with the Housing Task Force to firm up some of the ideas that were brought up at the work session on August 8th. Again, the public is invited to attend. And then we hope to present to the town council at the September meeting a recommendation for considering adoption. Again, let me read that again. A recommendation for considering adoption of a PUD or Plan Unit Development Ordinance. It is not in September, not a recommendation for adoption, but to consider the concept. Before we go forward, I thought I would take a few minutes, if you were all right, to explain a little bit about what a planned unit development, or PUD, is. A planned unit development is an integrated development adhering to a comprehensive plan and located on a single tract or on 2 or more tracts of land that may be separated by a street or other right-of-way. It's a form of development that, although conceived some time ago, is used today to advance a number of important smart, and I emphasize smart, growth and sustainability objectives. It has a number of distinct advantages over a conventional lot-by-lot development. If it is properly written and administered, a PUD can offer a degree of flexibility that allows creativity in land planning, site design, and the protection of environmentally sensitive lands not possible with conventional subdivision and land development practices. Moreover, a PUD is capable of mixing residential and non-residential land uses, providing broader housing choices, allowing more compact development, permanently preserving common open space, reducing vehicle trips, and providing pedestrian and bicycle facilities. In exchange for design flexibility, developers are better able to provide amenities and infrastructure improvements and find it easier to accommodate environmental and scenic attributes. So the PUD is something that the Housing Task Force feels is the next logical step to consider for the town. I've done some description of a PUD there, and I invite Mr. Achel in the audience, who's a member of the Housing Task Force, if he has anything that I aired, and I asked him for his comments in great trepidation of what he
Mr. Gatlin did an excellent job of a brief summary. The only thing I would add is that the town faces a unique challenge. The comprehensive plan points us towards a major challenge of trying to do everything the town can to increase residential population. This long discussions in this room and others, the nature of the town has changed from essentially a sleepy little residential burg to a thriving center of world-renowned dining, world-renowned artistic expression, and many other things, but to some extent at the cost of affordable housing for families. So on the one hand, the comprehensive plan says ideally the town would like to double its residential population. If you look at the residential, the physical places left within the boundary of the town where that could happen, and the current zoning, it is almost impossible to foresee a way that the town will ever meet that comprehensive goal of residential growth. So the PUD is being considered as one means of demonstrating to earnest partners that the town is serious about trying to pursue that comprehensive goal of residential growth. Also providing multiple options, a variety of housing types. Doesn't necessarily mean you obliterate existing zoning, but it would give the town council the capacity to work with an earnest partner to do something creative, to demonstrate some initiative, to preserve open spaces, to do a lot of 21st century kinds of design that the current zoning of this town does not permit. You could argue that it would be easier to just do a series of special use exemptions or variances or whatever, but you will not attract, there's research that demonstrates, you will not attract the kind of sophisticated, creative, well-funded, earnest partners that it will take to do that in this town, to everyone's satisfaction. So this is a signal to people in the area that the town is sincere and serious about entertaining options to increase residential housing. It provides a legal vehicle to accomplish that. It might never be used. However, without it being on the books, you forego that opportunity. So that's why I think the Housing Task Force has, Ray Gooch is also a member, he's been through all the meetings, he may have something else to say. But that's why I think the task force has been quite serious about moving forward promptly and hope to have something in front of you that gives you enough detail that you can make an informed and educated decision about it. Fred gave you a very good brief description of what a PUD is. I tried to give you the justification why the task force is thinking that might be something we want to consider. That's where we are as of now.
Thank you, Jerry.
Great. Dave, do you have anything you would like to add?
No.
All right. That's the report from the Housing Task Force. Let me once again provide my thanks, and I'm sure it's on behalf of all the town council members, to all the people who have participated in these task forces over the summer. And I encourage members of the public to continue to attend these task force meetings that will occur as they go forward. And that is the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Good look. I'll move.
Do we have a chance to speak, or is this closed?
Yeah,
I was just
on this
wondering.
subject.
Yes,
On
I
this
was
subject.
just wondering what area of this, of the area that you were looking at to expand the town out, so to speak. And I heard someone say something about the floodplain was relaxed. I guess that means that now you can build in that area? Did I understand that correctly?
I don't know exactly what it means. I'll find out.
I don't, if I can be civil, I don't think there is any, the town council is not entertaining at this moment any particular building strategy or anything of that ilk. So I think to couple this new floodplain plan with any kind of potential building is not a correct association. The two are distinctly different activities. As I said, at this point, the town is not entertaining any kind of housing development of any sort. Nor is the town at this point entertaining any kind of boundary line adjustment. We have talked about it on the town council as something to consider in the future, but certainly there is no set plan of what's going to happen with that at this point. It's really driven by the people who would be interested in being part of the town.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of, just was concerned about the
The
floodplain.
floodplain, most of the properties that have flood, I mean, this means you have to have flood, you have to have insurance.
You can still build in the floodplain, but you have to have flood insurance.
If you do, and most of those properties,
Or-
I'm sorry, most of those properties are in conservation easement already anyway. There's only maybe one that I know of. But once we get the new plan, I'll be more clear about that.
All right, new business. Country Water proposal to replace fire hydrant on Piedmont Avenue. As some of you will recall, was it 2 months ago or so, major flooding, broken pipe on Piedmont, very expensive to repair. In the process, we had to disconnect the existing fire hydrant, which is on Piedmont, which is pretty much adjacent to Brad Schneider's house. We have a bid from Country Water, and the goal is to consider tonight and perhaps vote on it. A couple of points, however. asphalt estimated of $3,500, which would be required to cover that portion of Piedmont that got torn up. The town is going to be, parts of the town are going to be repaved sometime in September. Piedmont is not scheduled to be repaved until next year. However, we're going to see if the VDOT people, really the subcontractors, while they're here and they got the paving and they got the stuff, could pave or patch that area at a cost that would presumably be significantly less than what's on this bid. So that's sort of an open end. Otherwise, I don't know, Brad, you're the expert on this kind of stuff. It's a lot of money, but it's a fire hydrant. It seems to me it needs to be replaced.
Yeah, just so people better understand what happened. The main pipeline coming down Piedmont from the water tank to serve the town, the pipeline itself did not rupture. There was no break in the pipe or anything else. What happened is that off of the main line, you have short lengths of pipe to serve fire hydrants. Each hydrant has a valve that allows it to be isolated. So you can actually turn that valve and actually turn off that hydrant. The valve is old, and the bolts that hold the valve together are carbon steel. You bury carbon steel in wet ground, and over time, they rust. And that's what happened. They rusted away. The valve bonnet, the top of it, actually came off and did so in such a way that it could not be reassembled with just simply adding a new gasket and bolted back together. So the valve itself is not, there's not enough integrity there to use it. So we met with Country Water to examine what options there were. One of them is more, it's a few dollars cheaper, but it's a little more cumbersome overall in the repair, and that is going back onto that same line, basically kind of taking things apart and trying to put it back together. But the hydrant itself is quite old, so the way the hydrant is set, it's actually, when they put it in, it's based in concrete. So you have to take that out, you've got to remove that concrete around it, you're going to resurface or essentially refurbish the hydrant. So you end up with a lot more work. The alternative was to actually go up the line, going up Piedmont towards the water tower by a short distance and tapping into the line there. It's a much more straightforward process of tapping into the line, putting a new valve, cutoff valve in. They'll have stainless steel bolts rather than carbon steel bolts, so we shouldn't have this problem in the future, and putting in a new hydrant. We had a discussion here in Town Hall about this. The only other hydrants are much further up towards the Piedmont, towards the water tower, and then towards town. Obviously, you know, you don't want to start decommissioning hydrants for various reasons. So as we looked at it, it made sense to say, let's go ahead, let Country Water come in, do this work, put in a new hydrant, new valve, and a new tap into the main line. And then when they do that, the old hydrant will be actually taken out. So there's no confusion of two hydrants and questions there in the event of emergency. So public safety will be maintained.
So this is for the new tap process?
It's a new tap into the line and a new hydrant.
Okay,
I
that's
don't-
the new tap fee.
I don't see the hydrant listed on here. I see varying
Parts of
hydrant,
it.
3.
Well, I think the
It's that part,
2,500, that is the hydrant.
That is the hydrant, I think.
Yeah,
Because you have a labor cost at the bottom,
right.
so you wouldn't have to bury, maybe the name of the hydrant is a bury hydrant or something like that.
Is
Or
this
just
something,
someone who's using it unique?
I I think it needs to be done, but is this something maybe we should look at, maybe talking to Rappawan or something? Is that an estimate?
No, you're gonna end up spending more time, and I don't think they're gonna do it any cheaper.
And I recall another estimate earlier was 20,000.
That was for the other one.
So
And also
this is
getting
actually,
Rapid one hasn't worked in town in a long time. Some of those valves that existed and not even using the cast iron pipes anymore, to get them up to speed on what's happening.
Yeah.
I
Country
don't
Water,
think you're gonna save much money if
No.
by doing that.
Country Water
It's
is,
nice to have kind of an option there. It's kind of, isn't that sort of the town's interest that we should be looking at doing putting it out to bid, so to speak, or so. But, I'll go with what you all want to do. I think it does need to be replaced.
I think we need to replace it. Now, one of the things we did talk about is that, you know, we have a lot of hydrants in town. We may be encountering this with other hydrants as we go down the road over time. So one of the things when the task force is to actually look at this kind of an issue. Craig and I have talked about trying to get together, get our schedules coordinated, to actually go through the whole system. So we identify how many of these valves potentially do we have? What other areas, you know, do we need to address? Because if we're doing some other repair or something else, it can be, and this dovetailed into it, you know, a valve replacement, that makes perfect sense. But I think for right now, it's really pertinent that we, you know, get this one put back into place, main line. And the other part about this is they can do this repair without shutting down the town. If they do the other way, which would be a few dollars cheaper, I think it was only $1,000, $1,500 cheaper, they would have to shut the town down for about 8 hours. All the water to town would be shut off. So this way they tap it live. So we do not disrupt business.
Yeah, two questions back to your previous point. How many, when were the hydrants installed and how many hydrants are there in the town? Do you know?
I have a list upstairs, I think it's in the 20s, but I haven't.
Yeah.
And when was the system installed?
I think in the 90s. Some,
Yeah.
most of them are on the new lines that were put in the 90s. We had the one that was failed before was on the cast iron pipes, and that's why it ended up being problematic, but it was put up down further on the main line.
and that
So,
was before the 90s, right? That was put in before the 90s?
yes,
Yes.
for some reason that one was, or for whatever reason, it was put on those old pipes, but, anyway, we do have a list of all the,
I'm just wondering, you were talking about this as a potential cost. I'm just trying to do a little multiplication in my head.
Well, it may not be this kind of a cost, you know, for every one of them. So this, and again, this is where I have to sit down with Craig, you know, come up with what makes sense, what's reasonable. Because it may be, it's just the valve itself will only have to be replaced. We may be able to isolate,
Right.
you know, replace that with the hydrant, everything else stays the same. So that's where he and I have to really kind of figure out sort of a map and a plan of what potentially needs to be done.
we have, a map.
Laura Louder.
We have a list of all the hydrants and every, so.
That's all right, I just wanted to
No,
rough
but you should
idea.
know this next part, is that we have to do pressure testing on them and so you get your insurance rating.
Right.
So the fire department has that list as well. And there's one of a reservoir too. And there's one down by the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you.
I think what you were probably getting at, I mean, the headline here, which everybody knows, but we have an old system and stuff breaks. And more is going to keep breaking. And it's expensive to fix. And the town's going to be confronted with this going forward. And we've been operating on kind of an ad hoc kind of basis. And that when the infrastructure committee finishes doing what they're doing and says, here are all our needs, and the finance committee gets together and says, here are the economics, we're going to see ourselves over a multiple year period, you know, a need for money. in terms of capital asset kind of.
And there may be grants available through USDA, EPA, and things. And that's one of the things that Nancy's done some preliminary work already to kind of where are some of those places to go that we can take a look at. But again, you have to do that first inventory, kind of know where you're at.
Well, so we have before us, I guess essentially, do we want a motion to approve this expenditure, go ahead with Country Water as is? If we can get asphalt done on the side separately for the less money, we would do that. I wouldn't count on it, but possible.
Say something about it, that I think it's dangerous not to have a fire hydrant there. And I think that if you have a plan that it can possibly be reduced even more, because I see quite a reduction compared to our first estimate. So I think it's well worth it to pass it now and get it done.
Brad, did they say how long this would take to do?
They can do it in about a day.
A day?
Yeah. And again, they do not have to turn off the town's water. The way it's designed, the tap that goes in, they'll do the work. The only people that really notice it are me, because I'll see everything.
And the other people up and down Piedmont.
Yeah.
Is this $2,000 item here for traffic? Is that to monitor
Yep, you have
the
that
cars
fire.
as you going?
Yep.
$2,000?
Yep, and you can't get around it. That's, VDOT requires it. So you get two guys standing there, looking at each other.
Exactly.
So close to each other.
The way that road is, I wouldn't want those guys working on something that is kind of.
No, people do runs over there and it's a little scary. Yeah.
It's always one of the frustrating things in these is what you pay the guys instead.
Yes.
They may need to be, in some cases, they really don't need to be.
No, I've done these types of projects and, you just kind of grit your teeth and you have to pay these fees for these guys. Fortunately, you don't have, it's just two guys with flags. You don't have signal trucks and cones and all the other paraphernalia.
It's going to be worse in Massachusetts. You'd have to pay overtime to police.
Yeah, you can get really silly. Yeah, and the asphalt thing, just where we kind of came up with that when we sat with Craig was that a lot of times when these guys are doing the paving, you'll see at the end of a job or at the end of the day, you'll drive along somewhere and there's a pile of asphalt because they can't take it back. So if anything left in the trucks, they dump it. So we're kind of hoping as we get to the end of the day, there's enough that they can say, yeah, we got to dump it somewhere. Let's lay it in there and, pack stack it. So
This
we're
is
kind of,
VDOT.
well, it's the paving contractor, but we're going to kind of get VDOT to say, look the other way while they dump it there on the road as opposed to on the side.
Do you need to give a conditional approval because they're going to come with a different estimate if you're taking the asphalt and the labor out of this? Do we need to get some kind of conditional approval for a lesser amount that you're going to negotiate?
Well, again, we don't know that we're going to be able to reduce that asphalt cost.
What we often do in these cases is to approve this proposal for up to
the amount.
Up to this amount. And if we can figure out how to save some money,
then
we do that.
Then they'll only bill us.
But that way we can have Craig and get the schedule.
Right.
Yep.
And I think we have a motion to do that. From you, Catherine?
Yes, I need to make a motion to approve it up to this amount.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you.
We laughing when we were sitting with Craig said, is this stuff available like the hydrant? Or is it going to be subject to tariff? It has to be imported. He assured us that they were available.
All right, let's have a vote on this. Roll call. Brad? Yes. I guess you're going to say yes. Yes?
Yes.
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 All right, terrific. All right, that's it in terms of agenda items. Let me open up the public forum, discuss anything one might want to discuss. Mr. H.O.
Just a quick note, I was pleased to hear that the new location will be between the current hydrant and the tank. You all remember discussions about the abandoned hydrant that's even further up. It seems to me that this is if it's moving in that direction, it's that much closer to properties that were previously served by the hydrant that wasn't.
We replaced that.
Well, we put a hydrant in.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
Oh, well,
at the end of at the turn, we did put a hydrant in, and we took that old one out.
Excellent.
So,
Still seems like a great action to take tonight.
Anything else? Any other? Mr. Pelican?
Yes, sir.
Brenda?
I'm Pelican, man, in Woodville, Virginia, the would-be county seat. Crisis. Anyway, I have to commend the town council today for taking its action on in stock. Those of us who have to pay full price don't mind doing that. We look forward to it. We're excited about it. I also applaud the sponsor of the event for choosing the first Sunday in September, because first Sundays are special to me, because we've chosen the first Sunday of December for the Christmas parade.
Yeah.
So I want to remind you all of the upcoming Christmas parade on Saturday. The benefits go to the food pantry. We didn't do as well as we wanted to last year, so I think we have to reach out to the community a little bit more to help us so the food pantry takes a little bit more home this year. But anyway, that's my point. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. If no other comments, I'm going to close the public forum. And we do not have a closed session. And some of these meetings, observations, some of these meetings run awfully long and we don't seem to always accomplish something. This one's lasted about 1 hour. And we passed the Airbnb ordinance, the in-stock resolution, a new fire hydrant, and a discussion about housing development and funds. So this is a pretty good hour and whatever minutes.
Well done.
All right, with that, I will close. That's acceptable to everybody, I'm sure it is.
I'll make a motion that we...
Second.
All in favor?